My story today is ghostly. I'm on my end. That's why we drink bullshit for Italy crimes.
Excellent.
I started looking into hauntings and found this story about Beatrice Cenci, whose story is one of tragedy, revenge, and a chilling haunting that lingers in Rome's folklore. So my case today combines the real-life account of Beatrice's brutal family life with the legend that surrounds her execution and the ghostly sightings said to take place on the Sant'Angelo Bridge, which, if we are anywhere near that when we are in Rome, I want to check it out. That might be a little day trip we take.
At night.
Well, sure.
We'll have to go at night. Should I bring my ghost meter?
Should I bring my dowsing rods?
Yes.
We go to the bridge? Two idiot fucking
meter.
Americans?
Yeah.
Why not?
Let's also be drunk so we can just maximize our obnoxiousness.
Great. According to througheternity.com, the Cenci family legacy was drama. Quote, Beatrice was born into one of the most ruthless of the powerful families who fought for control of medieval Rome. Although Pope John X was a Cenci, the family earned a reputation for fighting against the papacy, allegedly in the pay of external forces. In 1075, one Cenci kidnapped Pope Gregory VII, right? That's
the seventh.
VII. Just as he was V7th, just as he was performing mass at the altar of Santa Maria Maggiore. In 1398, another member of the family organized a plot to overthrow the papacy and murder Boniface IX.
Nice.
By the 1500s, their power and influence had decreased, but the family's notoriety was soon to reach its peak thanks to the actions of its cruelest member, Francesco Cenci, Beatrice's father.
Francesco Cenci.
So Francesco Cenci was notoriously cruel and tyrannical. He was a wealthy landowner, infamous for his violent temper and his criminal actions, which included, but were not limited to, physical and sexual abuse toward his children, particularly Beatrice and her stepmother, Lucrezia Petroni. Beatrice's elder sister, Antonina, felt so terrorized by their father that she appealed to the Pope to allow her either to be married off or to join a nunnery, anything to escape her sadistic father. There's a little more on that.
Oh my God, that's awful.
Several times, this motherfucker was accused of raping young women. There were also reports of him sexually abusing young boys. So he was out there in these streets.
Abusing everyone.
But one of the young women he was accused of assaulting was alleged to have been murdered by him after she refused his advances. So he came on to her. She said no. He assaulted her and he killed her. Francesco's violent behavior was so extreme that he was repeatedly jailed, but due to his wealth and influence, he's from this big wealthy papal family, he often avoided severe punishment. His power and social position meant that his bullshit was largely ignored by authorities, or he could pay his way out of jail.
A tale as old as time.
Yeah, seriously, some things never fucking change. To escape his consistent and justified scrutiny by authorities, he took a handful of servants, his wife, and the beautiful young and coming-of-age Beatrice to a creepy-ass castle in the small countryside town of Petrea Salto in the mountains east of the city. He had well over a dozen children that he had either bailed on or who had left him, so he put his focus on Beatrice, claiming he was trying to protect her from boorish Roman men now that she was approaching marrying age. But it's suspected, given his history of sexual abuse, that he was trying to kind of keep her for himself.
Oh, that's so sick.
Yeah. So he kept her and Lucrezia in isolation, so that's his wife, and out of the public eye where he could do what he pleased. Quote, he insisted Beatrice and Lucrezia both sleep in the same bed with him. He began forcing Beatrice to scrape the scabies on his body from head to toe.
Oh my God. Oh, that's so gross.
It's vile.
Ooh.
Beatrice wrote desperate letters to her brother Giacomo, but Francesco only whipped her when he found them. So she's like appealing to her brother who got out to be like, this motherfucker, I'm in his bed scraping his scabies. Please get me the fuck out of here. And he'd find the letters and beat her, whip her.
Oh my God.
It was fucking sick. This shit was fucking sick. I don't know a ton about his other kids, but did find this quote in Atlas Obscura, quote, while Francesco was paying off the justice system, such as it was, his children were doing their best to get away from him since he always seemed to have enough money for fines, but never enough to feed or clothe them.
His children.
Children, yeah. His son Giacomo disowned him and left. Cristoforo and Rocco, heirs to their father's temper, were killed in duels. So they had like also been messy boys and they died.
Messy boys.
Messy boys. Antonina, Beatrice's older sister, as we mentioned earlier, successfully petitioned the Pope and asked him for permission to either marry without Francesco's consent or join a convent to escape him. I'm not sure. Oh, she did get married. So the Pope consented to her marriage and stuck her father with a hefty dowry. And Francesco was pissed about this because he was paying his way out of trouble so much that he did not have a lot of money for the dowry.
Which he never agreed to the marriage in the first place.
And that was kind of the last straw event that motivated Francesco to take Beatrice and Lucrezia and get out of town. It's like, well, you can't get me to pay if I fucking leave. Because this was a different time. This was the 1500s.
Well, yeah, and the Pope was the one being like, I'm going to marry off your daughter. You got to pay me.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Sorry, I'm a little drunk and I'm drinking more. Here we go. So as the story goes, on the morning of September 9th, 1598, Plautia Calvetti, the housekeeper for the Cencis, was shopping in the village when she heard a loud commotion. A friend called to her, Plautia, Plautia, they are screaming in the castle.
Danielle.
She ran back to the Plautia. She ran back to the castle and saw Beatrice Cenci looking down from one of the windows of the castle.
Oh my God.
Plautia called up to her, but received no response, just staring into the distance, utterly silent.
Oh my God, I love
Unlike
this.
her stepmother, whose frantic screams could be heard echoing through the castle.
Oh.
As Plautia continued up the road, she met some men who were running away from the castle, screaming, Signor Francesco è morto! Count Francesco is dead. Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
His mangled corpse was found in a wooded thicket at the base of the castle, where the residents dumped their rubbish. He's just
poop pile
in a trash and poop
heap
hole
where he belongs.
Where he fucking belongs. Above the rubbish trench at the top story of the castle, a wooden balcony wall was broken and the count had fallen over 40 feet to his death.
Good for her.
Right? Fucking right?
Good for her.
Good for her. As townspeople and authorities attended to the scene, they noticed the corpse was oddly cold. Too cold for someone who had just fallen to their death. Further investigation of the broken balcony banister revealed the break looked oddly specific in size. Almost intentional to, like, fit the Count's body through or make it look like his body went through it. I'm imagining a medieval Kool-Aid man situation where it's like, this hole is too specific.
Yeah, okay.
When the body itself was like washed and examined, large jagged wounds were found near his temples. One, quote, large enough for a servant girl to ghoulishly stick her finger inside.
That's me. I'm
That's
the servant
Lucy.
Girl. Look
Tag
at the
yourself.
sweatshirt I'm wearing. It's my autopsy shirt.
It is external exam. Why incision?
So
Finger
they
in the
found
hole.
those wounds during the external exam.
There you go.
And I stuck my fingers in his head.
For measuring.
It's for science.
For science.
Research.
But this investigation of the body, the scene, the cold skin made clear the Count had been murdered.
Oops.
Oops. Without much pressure from authorities, Lucrezia confessed.
Oh.
So Lucrezia, Francesco's long-suffering wife, had given her husband a sleeping potion.
I love the phrase long-suffering wife.
Long-suffering wife. I know. It's so fucking good. It's so good. And after he had passed out, she and Beatrice instructed two men who worked in the castle to move him. Now, this is real old. So there are some reports that her younger brother, who was like still around, may have also helped, but we're not 100% sure. But we know at least two men who worked in the castle helped them with this plan. Francesco briefly awoke from his drug-fueled haze, and a struggle began with the guys who had been instructed to, like, yeet him over the castle wall. At the urging of Beatrice, the men held him down and smashed his head in with a hammer and chisel, the finger-sized hole, before tossing his body over the wall into the trash trench. Afterward, they broke apart the balcony to make it look like an accident. One of the two murderers was Olimpio Calvetti, a caretaker of the castle and husband of Plautia, the housekeeper, who had been porking Beatrice on the side, allegedly.
Plautia was? Or Olimpio was?
Her husband, Olimpio, who also worked in the castle. There are rumors that he was having an affair with Beatrice, and that's why Beatrice was able to convince him through seduction to take care of her abusive father.
So Lucrezia wasn't trying to kill him?
Oh, she was.
Oh, okay.
She and Beatrice. Basically, she and Beatrice are locked up in this fucking castle, scraping scabies and getting abused every day. And Beatrice was like, we have to kill him. Like, we have no other choice. We will never be free. And Lucrezia was like, bitch, you're fucking right. Let's do this. So they start working together.
Bitch, you're on.
Bitch, hold my drug potion beer. Let's fucking go. So it's tough because we've got misogyny at play. We've got word of mouth that's turned into legend. This is a really old story. A lot gets kind of put on Beatrice as the mastermind, including this whole, she seduced Olimpio because she was having an affair with him into killing her father. That's why I say allegedly. I saw this in a couple of different articles about this. We don't fucking know for sure if that's true, but it doesn't really
it's impossible
matter.
to know in these 16th century crimes.
Straight up. It doesn't really matter. I just thought I would include it as, a little moment of intrigue. Yeah. And also, like, these are the kinds of stories that will often be spun about women to take the blame off of the men who also were complicit in his murder. Yada, yada, yada.
She snapped.
She fucking snapped. Rightfully so. I will never scrape a scabies. I'm just not going to do it. I'm sorry. It's not fucking happening. So the Cenci family was arrested, including one of her like little brother, who we'll kind of get to. And despite Beatrice's claims that she and her family had acted out of desperation due to years of abuse, they were subjected to brutal torture. Beatrice, Lucrezia, and their accomplices were found guilty of parricide, so the murder of a parent, a crime viewed as particularly heinous in that era when it happened to the patriarch of the family. Didn't seem to be particularly heinous when it happened to the women in the family, including the matriarch of the family. But if you kill the dad, you're in big fucking trouble. Then there are
repercussions.
Right. So what I'm about to read next is a phenomenal excerpt from an academic paper that I found that talked a lot about Beatrice, more through the lens of, it's like an art history paper because a lot of like beautiful art of Beatrice was created during the trial or like while she was in prison, but also in the years following because she kind of became like a symbol of resistance. Oh. So I found this cool academic article. We'll have it linked in our sources so you could check it out too. But this kind of describes the event. So it says, quote, "Deep in the night of the 8th of September, 1598, the assassins gathered. Beatrice, with her steely resolve, exhorted her co-conspirators onwards to strangle, to pierce his eye with a stiletto, and to dispose of his body off the balcony. Yes. As they enacted the deed, Beatrice declared, 'My breath comes, methinks lighter, and the jellied blood runs freely through my veins.'"
Oh, she is excited.
Ready to be free. She's ready to fucking go.
Yeah.
The crime was soon discovered and the conspirators arrested and brought to Rome for the trial. These trials legally necessitated torture of all suspected to be involved.
Oh.
Only Beatrice, firm in her conviction that she had committed no wrong, refused to confess. Even as her limbs were torn on the rack, she eloquently disputed the accusations and questions put to her by the tribunal.
Yes, bitch.
The Pope, as covetous of her family's wealth as Francesco had been of her beauty, returned a new board of inquisitors to elicit the confession needed to send her to death. It was only the threatened indignity of having her hair shorn that broke her spirit and dragged a confession from her. So she didn't talk while being stretched on the rack. But
Bones
they were like
broken.
But they were like, own up or we're going to cut your hair. And she was like, fuck.
Oh.
All right, fine, I did it. Fine, I did it. I love her.
God. I love her,
I
too.
love her.
She is the moment.
She is the fucking moment. Despite popular public support for the family, especially for Beatrice as an aggrieved, pious Roman maiden, Pope Clement VIII, the Eighth,
V-E-E-E.
V8, V111, VIII, mandated their executions. He had at first thought to commute at least the women's sentences to life imprisonment due to the extenuating circumstances of Francesco's cruelty, but 3 days before they were to be executed, word reached him of the murder of another wealthy aristocrat by her son for refusing to make a will in his favor. So he's like, shit, this is going to become a pattern. We have to make what is it called?
Example.
An example of Beatrice and her stepmother and her two co-conspirators. So as a deterrent to other children who might want to rid themselves of their parents, and so that he, the Pope, could claim Francesco Cenci's vast wealth for the papal coffers.
Papal coffers.
Papal coffers. Papal, tomato. I don't know.
The PayPal coffers.
PayPal coffers. He needed his PayPal balance to go up. Clement reinstated the sentence of beheading for the women.
Oh, that's a really great pope that we had back then.
Straight up. So, I don't know, torture them for like weeks, months, however fucking long, threaten to cut her hair. Now we're going to censor them to death and we're going to cut off their heads. Okay, bye.
Don't cut off my hair.
Please don't cut off my hair. On September 11th, 1599, never forget, the executions were held at Castel Sant'Angelo, an ancient fortress overlooking the Tiber, I think. River. Beatrice, at just 22 years old, was beheaded, and her brother was tortured and then executed.
22?
22. The executions were a grim spectacle witnessed by crowds of Romans. People had come from, like, this was a huge deal at the time. And the trial and the torture and the trying to get the executions had taken a decent amount of time. I think that, like, the crime happened and then it was almost a year before they were executed. So, like, people knew this story very well. And obviously everybody in the village attended and came to Rome to see this go down. But a lot of just people living in Rome who had no direct connection to Beatrice were also spectators. That was the vibe. That's what people fucking did. Another excerpt from that amazing paper that I was talking about, which again, it'll be linked in our sources. Highly recommend giving it a read. Quote, giving her own dowry to pay that of 50 poor girls and sewing her own dress for her execution. The fateful day, 11th of September, 1599, arrived. Legend tells us that Guido Reni painted his celebrated portrait of Beatrice the night before her execution in her cell in Castel Sant'Angelo.
Oh my God.
Her youngest brother, Bernardo, spared from death due to his tender age and mental frailty, was nonetheless forced to watch the executions of his stepmother, his sister, and his brother, and the two accomplices, and fainted at the sight of his family's impending doom. Lucrezia was the first dispatched. Beatrice mounted the scaffold second. She presented
her mom's blood all over.
Yeah.
Warm and slick with her mother's blood.
She presented her arms to the executioner to tie, exhorting him to bind her body for its punishment, and that he, quote, likewise unbind my soul for its eternal salvation.
She is a bad bitch.
Yeah, what incredible last words. Upon the block, she calmly laid down her head, and with a single stroke of the sword, she was put to death. Her body was displayed until nightfall, when she was taken to San Pietro in Montorio and redressed in pure white garments for burial. A plain, unnamed stone marks her resting place.
Wow.
Which is apparently in some, like, little kind of chapel, catacomb type thing near Rome. So maybe we can find that. Take a little lift to this bridge. Say hey to Ghost Beatrice. Take a little lift to that chapel. Leave flowers for Ghost Beatrice.
Pour one out.
Pour one out. Many in Rome sympathized with Beatrice and her family, as her father's cruelty was well known. Everybody knew this guy was a fucking piece of shit. I'm sure everybody was like, duh. Like, it's about damn time. And yet, they're all being executed. And, like, obviously, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. I get it. But some people, like this motherfucker, do not deserve a day of peace. And clearly the justice system was not fucking working because he kept paying his way out of it. And these women were trapped. They were held hostage in this castle. I truly am like, this is self-defense. They drugged him. They stabbed him. They chucked him in the trash pile. Like, sorry about it. I don't know where to find empathy for this motherfucker. I don't know where to find it.
Did those conspirators get the death penalty also?
Yes. Yep. So the servants that helped.
Olympio.
It was a bloodbath. Her tragic fate, combined with her beauty and youth, turned her into a symbol of resistance against tyranny. In fact, a popular legend says that when Beatrice was executed, a great number of Roman citizens wore mourning garments, silently protesting the papal decision.
Ooh.
So they showed up dressed to make a fucking statement to bear witness to this injustice of them putting her to death for ridding the world of this fucking monster that had been basically holding her and her stepmom captive. Following her execution, the story of Beatrice Cenci took on a supernatural dimension. The Sant'Angelo Bridge, which leads to the fortress where she was executed, is said to be haunted by her restless spirit. Those brave enough to be near the bridge on the night of September the 11th sometimes claim to catch a glimpse of her ghost, dressed in white, appearing at the stroke of midnight, holding her head in her hands.
Whoa!
Can you imagine?
That'd be so cool.
That would be unbelievable to witness.
I love
Unfucking believable.
that.
While the truth behind the ghostly sightings remains a matter of belief, the tragic life and death of Beatrice Cenci left a lasting impression on Rome's history and folklore and art. I mean, beautiful pieces of art have been made in her likeness since then. Her story has inspired countless works of art, literature, and plays, turning her into a symbol of victimization and defiance in the face of cruelty. Her life has also been immortalized in various forms of literature. So we mentioned the painting of Beatrice Cenci by Guido Reni, which is on the drive, so you can take a peek of it. It's really beautiful. It's one of the most famous portraits of the Renaissance era. I didn't recognize it, but you are more cultured than I am, so maybe you will. It's this sort of...
the girl with the
wearing
thing on her head?
Yeah, and she's
they both
turning...
have a thing on their head.
She's like looking back over her shoulder. It's the one that's like clearly a paint, like an oil painting.
Got it. It's beautiful.
It's really beautiful. It's really beautiful. The French writer Stendhal wrote about her, and the English poet Percy Bysshe Shelley also penned a play called The Cenci, which explored the psychological torment that she endured. It's a play in 5 acts, and I totally want to read it. It's about her life and about the murder. That's on my list. Maybe when we're done reading about the bubonic plague, we can do this play on the plane as well.
Yep. We'll perform the play on the plane.
Yeah. And then they'll be like, oh my God, can we please upgrade you to first class? And we'll be like, absolutely. We thought you'd never ask.
And they'll be like, would you like another Bloody Mary?
Would you like another Bloody Mary? Would you like to lay down in Delta One? We'll be like,
yes.
We would very much like that. And also thank you for your time.
And also, you're welcome for this
and also you're welcome
performance.
For our performance. And we can do it again. We can revive this on the way back with maybe some more context of the Roman culture that we can infuse into the story, into the play, bring our own experiences forward.
We should adapt it into a musical for the flight home.
Oh, I like this. I like this. We'll get the travel team involved. We'll put together a number. There's brilliant people coming on this trip. So I think this is doable. I really do. So in conclusion, the haunting tale of her ghost has become a staple of Roman ghost stories. Like if you Google her, a lot of the top hits are like ghost tours of Rome or, Roman tourism. Like this is a well-known ghost story.
She's like the Sleepy Hollow of Rome.
Yeah, and Rome already has rich supernatural lore. A lot of shit's gone down there.
Lot of people died.
Lot of people. So that speaks to how pervasive and impactful her life, her story of her death was to the culture, that like this girl's story has kind of withstood the test of time and people still go to the bridge trying to see her all these fucking years later.
She's a feminist icon.
Pretty much. The legend of Beatrice Cenci's ghost persists to this day, with many Romans believing that the tortured spirit, oh my God, I'm so drunk, spirit of Beatrice roams the bridge seeking vengeance or redemption. The Sant'Angelo Bridge is now one of the most famous ghostly spots in Rome, drawing tourists and believers alike who want to witness a glimpse of the past.
Ooh. And
that's my story.
Of a beheaded girl. Good job.
Just a cutie with her own head in her hands. The bridge is also fucking creepy.
It's so creepy. I was going to say that.
It's roll creepy.
It's like drippy, mossy. There's like winged angels on it.
It's nasty. It's some nasty shit. And then, yeah, there's a modern day photo of the quote unquote castle, but it was just like their house where they lived. And it's so funny because it was described as like such a dump where he locked them up. It was like, this place is a fucking dump, and he's trapped his wife and his children here, and they fucking hate him, and he has scabies, and they murdered him, and nobody's sad about that. But basically, they really just came down on them because, like, the papacy wanted his money. And if they didn't fucking have these convictions, then they couldn't get his remaining fortune.
Oh.
So that was like a big part of why she is also a symbol of resistance. Well, I sure hope you liked that clip. If you did like that clip, make sure you are subscribing to our YouTube channel, leaving us a nice review, and joining us on Patreon for even more video content, audio content, salacious content all around. Come join us. Treat yourself.